Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back here with another video, and today I'm going to be talking about how to create a simple login and register system, and it's all going to be authenticated by using React, Node, and Express. So in the last video, which is not a continuation, which this video is not going to be a continuation from the last video, I talked about how to simply create an application where you can register and send that information to a MySQL database. And that after that information is stored, you can simply log in with the same credentials you entered right here, and it will display the username, meaning that it knows that this user already exists in the database. However, in this video, I'm going to be treating more complex topics. So the first thing we're going to be dealing with is how to hash a password. So basically how to retrieve a password. For example, if I register with a password saying my name, so Pedro, we would never store this password as Pedro in the database because that's simply very insecure. So what we would do is we're going to use a hashing algorithm, which we're not going to make. We're going to use a dependency already existent called bcrypt, and it's basically going to store in the database in a cryptic manner so that whenever we will never be able to see exactly what the password is, but we will know if the password is correct. So this is the first thing we're going to do. And the second one is we're going to try to implement sessions and cookies so that whenever you log in to your account and you like close your window or you refresh your page, you're still logged in. So it's all like a really interesting overall topic that a lot of people get confused on. So I thought it would be a good idea to make this video about this. So the first thing we're going to do is hash a password. So basically I have here my simple index.js file, and if you don't understand anything that's happening here, I'm going to summarize. We imported this dependencies right here. So we're using MySQL. We initialized all the middlewares. We're connected to our database. We created a post request for the register where we just insert the users into the database. Then we created a login route where we just check to see if the username and the password are the same. And if it is, we send the user to our front end, meaning that we are like correctly logged in. And if not, we send this message. And at the end, we just listen to the port 3001. This is the basic concept. So I'm gonna first open here and let me close my terminal. And I'm gonna install a dependency called bcrypt. So npm install bcrypt. And basically this dependency is really simple to use actually. So we're gonna go to over here and we're gonna basically call for the require bcrypt. So bcrypt equals require bcrypt. Okay, and we also want to define a variable called salt rounds, which is a property we're going to be using in our passwords. So salt rounds, and we're going to set it equal to 10. And in order to use the bcrypt, basically we're going to go to a register, and whenever we want to insert stuff into our database, instead of just passing the password that we got from our front end right here, we want to instead, before the db.query, we want to write bcrypt dot hash, which is a function, and inside of here we want to pass the password that we got from the front end. So in this case is rect.body.password that was storing the variable password. We can copy this and come here and paste password, and then we pass the salt rounds, and we pass a function which is going to contain an error if any errors occur, or in the hash. And basically let me just write hash. Why is it? Yeah, just let it be like this. Okay, so actually no, I need it to be hash. So let me do it like this. So okay, and this is going to be a function, and inside of here we're going to put all of our db.query stuff, because instead of passing the uncrypted password, we're going to pass the hash variable, which is going to represent the hashed version of that variable. We also want to check if there was any errors. So let's write if error, then we want to console.log the error so we can see what happened. But mainly is we have to focus on the part where we send the hashed password. And in order when we are logged in, we need to make sure that we can see that password. So basically, instead of just selecting all from user where username equals question mark and password equals question mark, so basically instead of calling for the database and asking it if we have a matching combination of a username and a password, we want to do it a bit differently. So we're going to erase this, and we're just going to get a user with the username equal to the username we tried to log in with. And the reason for that is because every user has a different username. So if you're trying to log in with your username, then the server will know that you're trying to access the account corresponding to that username. And the next thing it's going to do is just compare to see if the password you inserted is correctly hashed to the password in the database. So over here, we're only going to be passing username instead of username and password. And instead of doing all of this together, we're going to come down here and we're going to select all from users where username equals to something, right? So the result of this is basically the user. And if result.length is greater than 0, instead of res.send result, we want to erase this, and we want to basically see if the combination is correct. So we got to write bigcrypt.compare, which is a function. And in here, we got to pass the password that the user inputted, which we defined up here as password. So let's grab this. And we want to compare it to the result, to the password in the database from that user we're trying to access. So in order to grab this variable, we got to write result. So result and the first, because remember, this is an array. So we got to grab the first element of the result, which is the user, dot password. And this will basically make the comparison and return a function. So let's check error and result. And actually, let's give a different name for result. So because we already defined a result up here, let's call this response. And let's pass a function. And inside of here is where we basically say if it is correct or not. So res.send, if it is correct, if response, so if it's correct, we just want to res.send result. Else we want to send this exact same thing, so wrong password combination. And let's actually erase this, because now this side, if it doesn't catch the result.length is greater than 0, it doesn't mean that the combination is wrong. It just means that the user doesn't exist. So user doesn't exist. Okay, so this is the basic concept of it. We're going to try running this to our MySQL database. So I'm going to open it right now. And inside of here, I'm going to be entering my local instance, which the password, it doesn't really matter, is the same as I defined here. And let's go to my database called login system. And let's see all the information from the users table. You can see that before we were storing passwords directly how we wrote it in the front end. But now if we refreshed our server, so node index.js, now you can see it's running. If we come here, refresh our front end, and we want to register the user, Google, and the password is YouTube. You can see that when I click register and go to our database, instead of storing YouTube, it doesn't store anything at all. Let's see the error. Okay guys, I just realized what the error is. Basically saying data too long for the column password, because when we created our tables, we said that password had to be exactly like a maximum 45 characters. So now that we're hashing the password, it's basically creating a huge password, and that's why it's giving this error. So let's change this to, 500. I don't think it's more than 500 characters. So let's apply. And now let's try again. So let's close this. You can see that everything is correct. If we try to log in with this, if we try to register, and we refresh this, now you can see that instead of storing the name YouTube, it's storing a huge password, which doesn't make sense to us because it has its own hashing algorithm. And if we want to compare it to see if that username exists, so if we come here and write Google, and we write YouTube, you can see that it says it correctly logs in. It compares what you inputted here and it hashes it to see if it's the same as the one in the database. And if it is, it displays Google. But for example, if instead of that I wrote whatever and I clicked login, you can see it's wrong username and password combination. And instead of putting Google, if I put something like MacBook Air, which is a non-existent user, and I click login, it's gonna say user doesn't exist. Now this is like a very good, like it's a lot better than what we built on the last video, because now we can test all the different test cases, and now we can hash our password, which makes it a lot more secure. So yeah, this is the first part of the video, and now we're gonna basically be working with sessions and cookies. Okay guys, so now that we hashed all of our passwords and we just want to transition to a place where we can have sessions and we want to use cookies, we gotta install some packages. So go here to your to the part of your application which has the backend. So in my case is this terminal right here, and you need to install 3 packages. We need to install Express Session, Buddy Parser, and Cookie Parser. I've already installed all of these 3 because I didn't want to risk the fact that my Wi-Fi is horrible, but just press enter and all of this will be installed. You can see in my package.json that everything is installed, right? So Buddy Parser, Cookie Parser, and Express Session. And we're gonna basically just require all of those packages. So Buddy Parser equals require Buddy Parser, and I will explain to you guys what each one of them basically does. So const cookie parser equals require cookie parser, and let's also const session equals require express session, right? So this should be right. And basically all of this does is basically we're going to be parsing all of the rect.buddy elements that we get from the front end. This is why we use buddy parser. And cookie parser is just to, again, parse all the cookies we have. We're basically going to be working with cookies, so we need to install this dependency. And express session is basically where we're going to be creating our sessions and maintaining them, because as you know, Express creates stateless HTTP servers. So you basically wouldn't be able to store that information, and every time that you restart the page, it wouldn't be able to remember it. But with Express Session, you can do that, which is great because we need that in order to keep our user logged in when he opens a new tabs or when the person refreshes the page. So we gotta make some changes first. And the first one is changing the CORS. So a lot of people, when they're working with Express Session, they forget to do this. Basically, when we're using CORS and we wanna make this kind of connection between the backend and the front end by using sessions and cookies, we gotta set some information. So first we gotta give it an origin, which is basically gonna be an array of the different URLs that we wanna take. So basically in our case, we're just gonna pass our front end, which is in the localhost 3000. And we also want to pass the methods, because it's basically the methods that we're gonna be using. In our case, we're just using get and post. And most importantly, and this is something that a lot of people still get like errors because of this, and this is like a very huge bug in this in the area of people who work with Express Session, and they always get a lot confused with this. I know this because when I started doing it, I spent like hours trying to figure out my error, and this was the error. Basically, we gotta set the credentials equal to true, allowing the cookie to be enabled. So this is basically what you gotta do. And next thing we need to do is basically apply our middlewares. And what do I mean by that is basically we're gonna copy this, or maybe, no, let's just let it like that. We're just gonna come down here below CORS, and we're gonna write app.use cookie parser. So we're just gonna use a cookie parser dependency, and that's how we set it equal to like how we make it work. And we also gotta app.use buddy parser, so buddy parser, and we gotta write dot URL encoded and pass an object with a variable called extended, and it is true. This you don't even need to understand what this does. You just gotta remember that you always gotta put this. So I don't want to confuse you guys. So just remember that you gotta always put this, or else it won't work. So now that we have everything set up, we gotta initialize our session. So in the Express Session dependency, we can just write app.use just like the other ones. We write here the variable that we called in the beginning for the express session, so session. And we got to pass all the information we have for our session. So we got to pass a key, for example. And the key is just the name of the cookie you're going to create. So we're going to call it user ID. And we also got to pass the secret. And the secret is very important. So in normal cases, I would recommend creating a very huge secret that no one would ever know, because it is something you really need to be careful with. In my case, I'm just going to call it subscribe. I don't care, like this won't be like, it will serve for nothing if you guys know what the secret for this session is. So basically we also gotta pass a resave, which is false, and a save initialized with it, which is false again. And these two, you don't really need to know what they do. I don't even know it. I just know that I always have to put this. And you gotta pass the cookie and pass an expiry, like when you want it to expire. So basically, let's make it so the cookie will survive for 24 hours. So you can maintain yourself logged in for 24 hours. And this is in milliseconds. So in order to pass 24 hours, you gotta write 60 times 60 times 24, because it's the amount that represents 24 hours. So basically we created our session, which has a cookie that is going to expire in 24 hours after it's created. So what we need to do now is basically go to our login part. So basically here, and before we res.send result, before we send to our front end saying, oh, here is the result, this is the user that is logged in, we want to create a session called user, and this is going to basically contain the result that we fetched, so that whenever we want to access it again, we can just call that session. And now whenever we refresh the page, we can call the session forever until the cookie expires and already know who is logged in. So over here, we can just simply write let user. And the reason why I'm going to do this is because I want to create a user object with the result. So actually, I don't even need to do this. I can just use result, right? So basically I can come here and write rec.session, and this is how you create a session, right? So you write rec.session, the name of the session, so user, equal to result. And now we're setting a session called user equal to whatever user we get from our database. So now that we have that, let's kind of check to see if everything is working. So let's console.log rec.session.user, and let's refresh everything. So let me node index.js, and you can see the server is running. Let me come here and let me try to log in with Google, and I think that, yeah, the password is YouTube, right? When I click here, you can see that something was logged into our backend, and the information that was logged is basically the result from everything. So we are basically storing our rec.session.user equal to the result. And when we try to console log rec.session, it responds with everything that we created, as you can see right here. I just realized that I also accidentally created 2 Google users, and that's a bad thing. So I'm just going to delete the row. I don't know how that happened, but I'm going to delete it. And now we only have one. What happened? Basically, there was an error. Okay, that doesn't, oh, I didn't delete the whole thing. So delete rows and apply. Okay, so now it's correct, and we deleted the unnecessary user. Let's refresh this, and you guys saw that everything worked. So our session is working. However, in order to see the session, like in order to send information from our front end to our back end to see if the session exists, you got to be really careful. There's something in between the connection of our front end with React using Axios and the express session that always confuses a lot of people. And one of them is that you need to set axios.defaults.withCredentials equal to true in the front end as well. So you got to come here before everything and write axios.defaults.useCredentials. No, it's not use credentials, it's with credentials equals to true. If you don't do this, it's not going to work. So you got to save this. And now let's basically go here to our page, and let's create a use effect. Basically, this use effect is going to be running every time that we refresh our page. So let's just pass an empty array over here, meaning that it's only going to be called once. And inside of here, we're basically going to make an access request requesting to see if a user is logged in. So whenever we refresh the page, if a user is already logged in, it's going to display the username. So let's come here and write axios.get and pass the HTTP 2/ localhost 3001, and we're going to pass this /login. So we're going to create two routes, one for like two routes with the name login. And the reason why we can do this is because one of them is post, meaning this is the one where we insert data into our inputs and try to log in. And this one is going to be a get, so meaning that whenever we refresh a page, we want to get information from this, basically saying if we're logged in or not. And after we get that information, we want to pass a promise, and it's going to have a response, just like the other ones. And we're going to pass a function, which for now we're going to console log the response, so we see if we are logged in. So if we go to our index.js, let's create this route. So let me come here, and above the app.post/login, let me write an app.get, and let me write /login. And over here I can pass a require and a response. And inside of here, what I got to do is basically question to see if if the user is logged in or not. So basically we're going to be asking if there is a session.user. So if there is a session with a user object already created in our server, then we basically just want to res.send the following object. So we want to send an object with a property called login, which in this case is going to be called true. And we also want to send the object, right? So we got to send user, a property user with the react.session.user. And if not, so if there isn't an object called react.session.user, we want to send it the same object, but instead of you having the user, we won't have the user, and instead of being true, it's going to be false. So this is going to how we're going to be checking in the front end. So false. Now if we save this and we refresh this, so let me refresh this, you can see that over here, let me already see if we have a cookie. So in order to see if you have an existing cookie, you got to come here and go to your application, and over here in cookies, there will be a cookie over here, basically saying like the name will be user ID and the value will be whatever we set. So there's nothing for now, and I just saw that there's an error. So basically, let me refresh this. Okay, now it doesn't have an error. Now that I refreshed because our server is running, you can see that the useEffect hook console logged something. And the console log basically contains the data which says logged in equals false. The reason for that is because we're simply not logged in. However, if I come here and I write Google and YouTube, which are the combination, and click login. Wait, I wrote the wrong thing. So YouTube and click login. You can see that it has logged in, but you can't see anything over here because we aren't refreshing the page. If I click refresh, you can see that now the data isn't logged in equals false anymore. It's actually logged in equals true, and there's an user object which contains the Google information, even the hashed password, which we shouldn't actually be passing to our front end the hashed password, but basically this is just the simplest version you can do. So now we're basically getting our information and sending them to the front end whenever the user is logged in. So if we come to our app.js, instead of console logging this information, we can simply get our set login status that we created over here, which just represents the username, and we can write here response.data and grab the first. No, actually we gotta write .user. And as you remember, we're actually sending an array of users, right? Despite it only being one user, because we're just selecting one user that has the same username and password combination, it will always send as an array. So if there's only one user, you can just put 0 because it's gonna be the first element in the array. And over here, we can write .username, and now we're grabbing the username for the user. And when we refresh this, you can see that Google will always be there. So for example, if I come here and write localhost 3000 and I close this, you can see that Google is still there, because if we go to our inspect and our application, the cookie now exists over here. If I delete this and I refresh this, you can see that now it doesn't anymore, but we got an error. The reason is because there's no response, right? Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to be checking in our front end to see if this works. So we're only going to set login status equal to response data.user if the response dot data dot logged in is equal to true. So only if it's equal to true, we want to set this equal to the username, because else there's no user object we can access, right? So if we save this, you can see everything is working. If we come here and let me just see other users instead of Google, there's Pedro Tech and the password is password. If I come here and write Pedro Tech with the password and click login, you can see that now it's wrong username combination. Let me try again. Password. Oh, I guess I know why it's a wrong password combination, because now we're hashing our password. So just ignore both of this because the passwords are not hashed. So let's create a new user. It's gonna be named please subscribe, and the password is gonna be like and comment. This isn't any type of secret message I'm going to be passing to you guys. It's just a user I'm creating. So if I click register, you can see it was created. And if I come here and just try to log in with this user, and let me copy this, now it will say please subscribe. And the cookie was created. So if we refresh this, it should have been created actually. Let me see what happened. Oh, I didn't delete the last cookie. So let's refresh this. And let's do it again. Please subscribe. Oh, I just saw that I misspelled this. So instead of log in, it's going to be log in. And now the cookie works and everything is working. So if I refresh it, please subscribe is logged in and everything works. So thank you guys for watching. This is my second video of this small three videos about authentication and registration and login in React with Express. The first one was a very simple version. This one is a little bit more complicated. The next one is going to be a lot better. Like the next one, I only recommend for people who are actually needing to have a secure system. Like this one works for most projects. This one is probably one of the best because it's I wouldn't publish the website with this because it isn't as secure as you know. But it's also very important that you understand all of the topics that we talked here. And in order to reach the secure version of an authentication system, you got to understand all of the topics I explained in this video. So in the next video, we're going to be talking about passportJS, JSON Web Tokens, a bunch of different topics that are more complex and which wouldn't fit in this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked this video, please comment down below and subscribe to the channel. And I see you guys next time.